Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Stephen King podcast. Bonus episode with a returning guest this time, a writer, Anne Charles. We had her on way back in episode 17 of March 2nd, 2020. And she's returned here with an update because she's got some new stuff that she wants to talk about, and looking forward to hearing what she's been keeping herself busy with. So, Anne, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Lou. Thanks for having me on today. Like I said earlier, I'm coming off of carbs from Thanksgiving, so right. I may take a little longer to answer you. I might flub words. Just be ready for anything right now.
Not a problem. That's what we like to hear anyhow. So you were last on in episode 17, and if people really want to do a deep dive in your background and so forth, I would point them towards that episode, and I'll put a link to that in the notes for this one. But you must have an elevator pitch for yourself. If you've been done a couple of interviews, I'm sure you've got this all memorized in your head right now. So why don't you let the audience know who you are and what you write?
Okay, I'm Anne Charles, the USA Today bestselling author of the Deadwood Mystery Series, the Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series, the Dig Site Mystery Series, the Deadwood Undertaker Series, and the AC Silly Circus Series. So there's a lot of series in there. Otherwise, there's my Thanksgiving carbs. I write books. Uh-huh. I keep very busy putting out some books and interacting with readers. And you can find me on my website at that's my email address, www.anncharles.com.
Right.
I can see that I should have drank a pot of coffee this morning before I got going, but then I'd sound like a chipmunk on stage.
Yeah, or maybe a glass of wine or something.
Right. Anyway, that's me. I'm Anne, and let's go. Let's talk more and see what comes out today, since it's all cloudy in there.
For sure. So, just to let our audience know, what do you classify your fiction as?
So, I write a real mixed genre group of stories. There's mystery, of course. There's humor always, because that's just one of the things I like to incorporate into stories. Some of the series have paranormal in them, paranormal elements, paranormal plot threads. The Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series is more action adventure mixed with mystery and suspense. And there's always a little bit of romance too, just because I started out in the romance world and I didn't do well in there, but I do love romance in stories. So there's always a little bit.
Right. Okay. But primarily you consider yourself a mystery writer then?
Yes, I mainly, mystery usually is the main plot that pulls through the book. Now, it's not like they're more character driven with an overall series arc that's going in. They're not really serial where there's just one, each book is standalone. They really all tie together and you watch the characters grow and their lives change as they go along.
Right. And are all the books series that you listed, are they all still current? Like, are you writing in each of them, or has one series completed and you're fully focused on another one, or where are you at with that?
No, they're all still going, and I'm slow on a couple of them. Earlier this year, I put out the 12th book in the Deadwood Mystery Series. And that one I will write number 13 probably later in 2022. I just put out a Christmas novella for the Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series. Okay. And I will be now working on book 6 in that series. And then the Dig Site series, I haven't been able to get to for a couple years, but I do plan to write the 3rd in that series in 2022. Okay. So, and the Deadwood Undertaker series, which is Old West mixed with paranormal, I co-write that with my husband, and he is currently working on the 4th book, and then he does his part, and then I come in after and do my part. So I see. That's in process as well.
Right. And just in case listeners haven't listened to the previous episode, can you clarify the Deadwood series, especially because obviously there's the TV series and yours is not that.
Right. No, it is not. My series, the Deadwood Mystery Series, I first published the first book back in 2011. So it's been out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a series about Violet Park. And you're only ever in Violet's head. And she is a single mom of twins. They're younger twins. And she's moved to Deadwood to start selling real estate, live with her aunt, instead of working where she was down in the city and not getting enough time with her kids. She wanted to, switch up her life.
Mm-hmm.
And so she moves up to Deadwood, and she's been there as a child with her aunt, but now she's really there full time. And so that series, it starts off with some ghosts, and then the paranormal just keeps building as you go, and you learn what Violet Parker really is and what she can do. And there's a cast of characters that grow and add on with every book and become a team of sort with her. So it's really fun because there's just a variety of characters, not just her. And each book so there's a lot of haunted houses and buildings in that area, Deadwood, South Dakota, in the real Deadwood. They talk about it all the time when you go visit that town and that location.
Right.
So each book has a different paranormal element, whether it's the haunted house, a haunted building, something with a certain ghost or other types of paranormal creatures that she's dealing with as she continues to grow as a character and as a mother, as in the relationships that come along. So it's a lot of fun because I really do keep track. There's an overall series arc that I'm on. So it's not just willy-nilly. And part of the fun of building a long series is getting to build character growth.
Sure.
And having the changes that occur, just like we in regular everyday life, we have things that happen that make us change, whether it's relationships or battles with people. So I really do have a lot of fun with that storyline, and having the paranormal element really opens it even wider for what can happen and what's going to happen.
Right. Are all your other series, I assume you said Deadwood Undertaker is a Western. Is it also contemporary? Are they all contemporary, I guess?
No, the Deadwood Undertaker does take place in the 1870s.
Okay.
And that is really the precursor to the Deadwood Mystery Series. So it's the same setting. It's the same location, same world, only it's back in the 1870s. So you see how things were starting and going back then. And because we are paranormal, what's fun is there's, I mentioned there's ghosts in the contemporary version. Well, you can see some of those ghosts alive back then. So it's really fun to get to play with the two timelines.
Right.
So they're the same world. Some of the same characters go back and forth because we are paranormal, so not everybody is a human. And it's really fun to have the two worlds together going and seeing what happened then and how things cross over.
Right. Yeah. So it's just sort of your own little mini multiverse going on with those two series then, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And actually, all my worlds or all my series, there's crossovers. The Dig Site series stars Violet Parker's brother, and Violet's in the Deadwood Mystery Series, and her brother Quint, who's in the Dig Site series. And then it's paranormal as well. So it's kind of that same paranormal world, only set at dig sites down in Central America, or it's actually Maya, so that area. And then the Jackrabbit Junction mystery series, while it doesn't have the paranormal element, it has all the mystery stuff. There are characters that cross over that you'll see in the different books that come to that area for different, they're related to the main heroines in that series, or different things like that. So it's a fun world that I get to keep building, and having those crossovers are great.
So do the brother and sister ever get together in the stories?
They do. So you'll see, so far you've seen Quint, the brother, be up there in the Deadwood series, because if you look at the timeline, what's happening in the Deadwood Mystery Series so far has been prior to the start of the Dig Site series and what happens there. So we're seeing the pre-world kind of Quint before he heads down into the jungle and experiences what goes on down there. So we see him a few times in different books, come in and interact with her, with his sister.
And do they compare notes on their super, like, is this a family thing? Like, what's the family history? Are they both surprised by the supernatural stuff, or were their parents or grandparents to have this ability as well? Maybe that comes up in the
It does. It comes. I'm trying to how I can word this without ruining everything for anyone who hasn't read this series.
Right.
They both are very surprised. Although once this all starts coming out, they realize from their aunt, who plays a major role in the Deadwood Mystery Series, that it is a family thing. But it skips generations. So they didn't necessarily know, but they were being watched to see if something was going to happen or not. So that's kind of over a high level of how that all works out.
Okay. And just maybe one more question that's hopefully not too specific, but do they share the same abilities, or does each of them have different ones?
They're different.
Okay.
But they're meant to work together to be a more solid front.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're separated by quite a distance.
Right.
So, you're having to make do with what you have without having that other half that would benefit you greatly in what you need to do.
Right. Interesting.
Which makes it more fun for me, the writer.
Yeah.
Because it's tougher. It's not so easy to do what you need to do.
Right. Right. So that's interesting that you've separated the two characters, which in a way parallels what has been happening for a lot of us in the world. Like the last time we talked back in March of 2020, I think that was COVID going then? I've lost track of the timeline.
It was I think it was just blowing up. It was just becoming a thing where everybody was like, oh, no, and starting to get really, at least here in the US, it hadn't really gone huge yet, but it was in the news a lot.
So that's kind of like, pre-COVID, you were writing these stories. How has that changed your series since the last time we talked, or have you incorporated that into your storylines? Did you just ignore it? Because I've heard writers take both approaches. I'm curious where you landed on that.
Yeah, I thought about it, but I decided no, because my worlds are, kind of built and set, even though they're contemporary. It's like an enclosed world, and I wasn't going to bring in COVID. However, it did affect me in that I got COVID.
Oh, my goodness.
This last May. And it had come at the end. I had a couple more chapters to write of the Deadwood Mystery Series book 12, Never Say Sever. And I had a deadline of about 3 weeks yet till I had to get it to my editor. And I had about 3 chapters to write. And my daughter came home with a cold. I'd spent a month writing 60,000 words. So I was pretty worn down because for me, I'm not usually a fast writer. So 60,000 in a month is a hard month with a lot of late nights, and pushing and stress. So she came home with this cold from school, and I just assumed it was a cold. Well, I ended up a few days later sick, just a head cold, it felt like, but it kept getting worse in my sinuses. And the Friday before the weekend, I contacted a clinic here, and they were booked out, of course, because everybody was, sick. And I was like, well, these are my symptoms. Can you at least get me some kind of something for the weekend to help with this sinus infection? Because it's killing my head. And they're a really great clinic. They said, no, you know what? Come in. We're going to have you in after hours. We need to take a look at you. Okay. So I went in, and she did a COVID test on me. But we wouldn't know the results till Monday. She just said, listen, your blood oxygen level is pretty low. It's down to 90, and you need to watch that. And we had to wait. I don't know why my husband has a thing to measure that for some reason. He gets all these great gadgets. So I came home knowing, if it goes below 90, you better get to the hospital. And, maybe this is COVID. And we'd had some experience because my husband had it months and months before. So I didn't seem to catch anything then. So I thought, okay, no big deal. Well, over the weekend, oh boy, that was a hard weekend spent with a lot of time looking up at the ceiling in my quarantined kids' room that I took over. And yeah, my blood oxygen, it did drop down into the mid to low 80s, but I didn't go to the hospital because I wasn't sure. I thought it was just an infection, a sinus infection. And I got the results Monday morning, and by then I was through it. And I had the computer on my lap, and I wasn't up and running, but I was able to sit up in bed and type and get back to work. And they called and said, you have COVID. You need to quarantine. And I was like, well, that explains the weekend I had and all the stuff I went through. So it did slow me down. on getting that book out. And we had to release, because I have a big fan party every summer in Deadwood.
Right.
And we were trying to get the book printed in enough copies to take to Deadwood for the fan party to do signings.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up putting out what we called the COVID version, which was not 100% edited, the usual stuff. It was one layer had not been done, the final layer of editing. So there were errors in it.
Right.
Little spelling errors that slipped through at the end to the end. So we did a limited number of those and printed them and took them to Deadwood. And that's what I ended up signing and selling. And people loved it because, you know, it says right on the title page, this is the COVID version, you know, and I'd sign it, damn COVID, you know,
right.
And I tell people, you know, if you find errors in there, you will find errors, but please don't email me and tell me about them because we fixed everything, you know, now it's clean. But so anyway, that was one definite effect it had on me. It majorly knocked me out of what I needed to get done and when in order for me to do what I needed to do. But we made do anyways.
Mm-hmm. So that must have been scary because if the timeline is if I understand your timeline, like the vaccines weren't even available at that time, were they?
Well, some were, and we live in a high retirement community area. So the kids and I were holding up. My husband had it. Because he had it itself and he wanted to not go through that ever again.
Right.
And so he had gotten his, but I was waiting to get mine with the kids so I could have the same one as the kids just to be, you know, we're all having the same thing. We'll see if there's any side effects.
Right.
So I was going to wait till mid-May-ish to get the shots when the kids could get it too. Mm-hmm. Well, then I got COVID and then you have to wait 3 months to get your shots. So we all ended up getting our shots then in August.
Right.
And of course, I got the double shotter. And each one, I had a 2 to 3 day mini COVID thing again. So we like to joke that now when my body sees COVID, you know, the things come in, it gets out the big fire, you know, shooters and all this stuff. And it just flamethrowers and it just burns everything. Cause I get a really high fever and I'm laying on the couch. And I think for the first booster, I told my husband, if I don't make it through, you know, this is where all the passwords are. Right. He's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I am a bit of a drama queen when it comes to being ill. But so then I went to get the second booster and the lady giving me the shot said, you probably won't get as sick then as the first. You usually don't. Oh my gosh. I did it again. Right. I was like, no more any COVID, please. Yeah, because my body does not like that.
Yeah. I guess that's part of the frustration with the whole thing too, because everybody reacts to it differently. Obviously, for some people, the consequences are very tragic, and for other people, it's nothing more than the sniffles and that. And like you said, even with the shots, like for myself, I had the 2 COVID shots. I had really nothing, and then this week I went and got the regular flu shot, and that just like knocked me out for a day. Like I was, you know, so
right, you were down.
So everybody's different.
It really, I really thought that since I went through COVID, it was actually tested, tried and true. It wasn't a maybe I had it. Yeah. I would handle those booster shots or the vaccine shots like no problem. Mm-hmm. But no, I went down in flames again and again. And my mother-in-law's visiting and she's getting her booster, I think today. She's 84. And she said, well, the first 2 times I didn't even react. And my husband looked at her and said, you probably shouldn't say that in front of Anne. Yeah. And I'm just looking at her like, shut up.
Yeah. So it's had such a strange impact on everybody. And now, like, you know, all these variants, and now there's another variant, Omicron. So it's, you know, like you just think when you just sort of start to let your guard down, then it comes back again. So it's going to be interesting to see how it affects people's creative outlet going forward. Like you've decided not to incorporate it into your stories. Other people have, but it's behind the scenes for your daily work routine and that. Like once you got over COVID and that, were you mentally able to put it in the background and work on a regular basis, or how did it impact your like regular day-to-day creativity?
Yeah, once I you know, that first week I finished the book and it took me that first week after COVID it took me an extra week from my deadline that I'd given myself because of COVID. Right. And I just wrote from bed. And then I a couple months till I needed to write Jackrabbit Jingle Balls, the novella I just released. And it's just a 33,000 word novella, but what normally would take me just 2 to 3 weeks to write something like that, I just struggled. And a lot of it is we do have some family situations. We're dealing with elderly parents and things that are going on that need more attention from us and have to fly, drive in different places in the country and help. So that's, having an effect on me too. But I ended up having to stop watching the news because, you can hear by the title, Jackrabbit Jingle Balls, it's humor. There's a lot of humor in it. And in order to keep up that level of humor for me, it required shutting out some of the outside world and all the COVID talks and so much negativity that, and I know from other author friends that I'm not alone. Several who have written well and kept a good schedule for years have stumbled and struggled for the last year and a half because of this. So I'm not superwoman by any means that can pull this off easily. And I just keep going into it hoping, okay, I really hope everything's still in there that I need to be in there.
Right. Yeah.
Once I tap into that.
And on the flip side, because people have been isolating and so forth, there's been a lot more consumption of media, streaming services and so forth. And I assume, if I believe I've heard correctly, that even like book sales and so forth have been really strong the last year and that. I don't know if you've noticed that for yourself.
What's really changed since COVID for me, and I'm not sure if it's COVID, I've done a lot more interviews on podcasts and radio, really been interacting this way more.
Right.
Since I couldn't go out and do book signings and do as much as I used to. Right. But what's really changed for me is audiobooks. I have all my books available in audiobooks. And my audiobook sales have 5 times, it's not double, it's not triple, it's like 5 times gone higher. And I think it's probably because people listen now a lot more. Yeah. And maybe people that were going to work or doing other things differently now will tend to listen to podcasts and many different kinds of podcasts. I know within my family, several of them now regularly listen to podcasts, like how back, 20 years ago, we'd listen to certain radio programs on the way to work. Now people pick podcasts a lot of times, or they listen to audiobooks for entertainment. Right. So that's definitely changed for me.
And your audiobooks, I probably asked you this in the last podcast you were on, but who does them? Do you do them?
Oh, no. We don't want me to do it. Every time I read aloud, I yawn. I don't know what that is. It's like my brain requires extra oxygen constantly.
Right.
So I'm not the greatest at reading aloud for long bits of time. No, I have, for the Deadwood Mystery Series, Carolyn Schaefer. She's a wonderful, I don't know if she still acts at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, but she reads all my Deadwood Mystery Series, the main novels. For the Deadwood Undertaker series, we have Jason Culp, who reads for us, and he's just amazing. He does such an incredible job with the voices. And in those Undertaker books, there's songs that my husband will come up with. And I'm always amazed because I'm like, did you make up this song, this ditty? And he's like, yeah. I'll be like, who knew you were a songwriter for the Old West? And then Jason will go and sing them. Wow. And if it's female singing, he'll do it in a higher voice. And it's so much fun to listen to him read those stories. And then the rest of my books, including the Jackrabbit Junction series, is narrated by Lisa Larson, who we've been together since the very start back in 2011, 2012. And she is really good at my expressions, saying them how I hear them in my head. Like, for example, if a character goes, "What?" She does it just that way somehow. And I'm like, I'm always laughing when I listen to her. I listen to them before we make them live. And she always makes me chuckle, and I say the line, and then she says it. And I'm like, I knew what she was going to say. And then I'm like, well, of course you did, you idiot. You wrote it. But she's really great at capturing that too, and the humor in the stories. So those are our 3 narrators. Just
out of curiosity, when you have scenes where in the Deadwood series where the brother and sister on the same scene, do you have both actors narrating, or do you Does one of
No,
them?
just the one. Just Carolyn does that. If Quint's up in Violet Parker's world, it's just Carolyn. What Lisa does is that's really cool, in my opinion. Is she has narrated my Deadwood shorts, which are shorts, novellas, and stories that go with the main series. But I don't have Carolyn read those. She just does the big books. So Lisa will listen to Carolyn and hear how she does the voices and try to mimic that as best she can, which is really cool in my opinion for a narrator to do, not to let her ego go, well, I'm going to read it my way, to go, no, let me try to help make that as seamless as we can for the readers.
Right.
Our listeners, I mean, sorry.
Yes. Yep. All right. So let's talk about your Jackrabbit Junction series then. You've got a Christmas story coming out.
Right. This is just a little novella that follows the Thanksgiving novella that I wrote for this series, The Wild Turkey Tango. Now, the trick to this was I already have the book after this Jackrabbit Jingle Balls story. It's already written, and it's a full novel, 125,000 words. So I had to fit this storyline in between the Thanksgiving story and the full book that's already written and out there and been out there for a year. So I had to really pay attention to plot lines and what had been told in the Thanksgiving book, but not, or what you didn't learn until book 5, In Cahoots with the Prickly Pear Posse. So it was like fitting a puzzle in between just carefully. And that was a challenge for me in its own way. But it was also fun to give little hints of what comes in book 5 in this novella, because in here I could put some little hints. So for the readers that have already read book 5 and they go back and read this Christmas novella, they'll go, oh, look, here it is, the start of this, of what's in book 5. So that was fun in its own way, even though it was more of a challenge.
Okay. So what's Jackrabbit Junction all about?
So that takes place in southeastern Arizona in a fictional town that I've created called Jackrabbit Junction. And it's actually, there is a physical location on the map that I set it in real world, but there's a different name for that area. But I renamed it Jackrabbit Junction, and I used the neighboring towns. I just renamed everything to make it fictional so I could add and play with it.
Sure.
Which is different than my Deadwood mystery series, which takes place in Deadwood, South Dakota. And I really try to follow strictly to the roads and the buildings and the history and everything there. So that has a lot of nonfiction mixed in to the setting, where Jackrabbit Junction has a actual location, but it's all fiction surrounding it, which in some ways it's easier because it allows me more freedom to do what I want. Anyway, so it takes place in southeastern Arizona, and it's kind of like a adventure series in that there's treasures that are hidden around there in the desert. I often read Treasure Island in between, before I get ready to write that series or watch one of the Treasure Island versions of the movies that have been made, because it really puts me in that treasure hunting feel,
Okay.
And the whole thing is there's a Winnebago park, an RV park, that's the setting. And that's the Dancing Winnebago's RV park. and the series starts with Claire Morgan. She's in her mid-30s, and she's coming down with her grandfather, who has his RV, because his grandfather is meeting some old retired army buddies, and they're going to try to hook up with some women and find some new wives or women. And these guys are in their late 60s, early 70s. So they're just looking to find some new women. Some of their spouses have died or they're divorced or whatever. And so Claire is going down with her grandfather because her mother insisted she go. She's currently out of a job, so that her grandfather doesn't hook up with a gold digger. She's stuck down there in this RV park with these 3 army vets and they've invited via chat rooms a bunch of women to come to the park and meet up. So she's stuck in this whole place she doesn't want to be. These guys, and they just treat her like one of the guys because they don't really want her there. She's ruining what they're trying to do here. And so she plays euchre, which is a card game with them, smokes cigars with them. But then she ends up getting a job at the RV park as a handywoman because she grew up helping her grandfather, who's a contractor. So she starts working there, and she meets the owner of the RV park. Her nephew, who's in his later 30s, comes to help. He's helping his aunt with the situation, who owns the park. So they meet, and that's the hero. And so that's the first book, as Claire finds a femur, a leg bone out in this one part near the park. And so the mystery starts. Whose does it belong to?
Right.
And then with the second book, her sister Kate, her younger sister Kate, comes down with the mother, the dreaded mother, who's just, oh my gosh. Who, of course, by that point, she's ready to chew the woman out that her grandfather's found because of, being a gold digger, she thinks. And then the third book in that series is the oldest sister, Veronica, coming down, and for her own reasons. And so then we have all three sisters there with the mother and the grandfather and then the whole crew.
Wow.
So it just keeps building, and they find more these hidden things that happen because the owner of the park, Ruby, her dead husband, he was a thief. And what he did was he moved black market goods or, stuff, and he hid them in the mines and stuff around there that he owned. And so he then skimmed off a lot of these things he was moving through. And so he took a lot of stuff from the thieves and he hid it in the desert and hid it around the RV park. And so people are always coming to try to get whatever never made it to where it was supposed to go. So that's kind of the mystery and the treasure hunting part, is there's always not so nice people coming to get what Joe skimmed. And Joe's dead, so they're stuck with what now? Right.
So what was the inspiration for this series? Do you come from a big family yourself, or?
I do. I have many. My mom had 5 children, and then my parents divorced when I was young, and they each married people with more children. So I have a lot of family, a lot of siblings and step siblings. So yeah, and I have 2 sisters, older sisters. So a lot of that, the relationship with siblings comes in, and the funny stuff and the way you act with each other, but yet you love each other. That kind of a thing. So yeah, that was part of it. And I had years ago driven through Arizona and passed an RV park in the winter and was just shocked at how many RVs come in. They become small cities. Right. So that was part of it too, is I had always had this idea of what would it be like to live in one of those places for a short time and things that could happen.
Yeah, there's a movie out last year with Frances McDormand, I think, called Nomad or something like that, or Nomads, about people that just move around the country living in RVs and that. So
right.
Yeah, that's a whole subculture that even Stephen King has touched on in Dr. Sleep with Rose the Hat and that.
Right. Yeah. Based on that show, I found a purple hat like she has because I loved her hat. Yeah. And I was at a steampunk convention down at Old Tucson with my son who writes steampunk. And I saw that a hat like hers, and it was purple, kind of crushed velvet. And I was like, that's it. Or it's felt. And I was like, I have to have that hat. It's just like,
Well, you have to get a picture of that up on your website then, because I see you in a cowboy hat, but
I know I don't. So I do different online book signings and different things online. And what I really like to do is wear different hats.
Oh, okay.
And so that's one I've worn for a couple things, and it's fun. It's a fun hat to wear, but I do wear all kinds of hats. I'm about to do a program tomorrow for the South Dakota Humanities where I talk about fiction, and I'm going to talk about all the different genres. So I've got a ton of hats lined up for each genre. It's going to be fun.
Cool. Okay, so just to circle back then to Jackrabbit Jingle Balls. I want to say bells, but balls.
Right.
How does this fit into the series again?
Well, it's the Christmas story, and when I wrote book 5 in cahoots with the Prickly Pear Posse, I skipped over Christmas and went to New Year's and started at New Year's. So this is me coming back. I left myself some space because I thought, I think I'm going to want to write a Christmas novella to fill in what happened over Christmas. And I just kind of alluded to it in book 5. So I apparently wanted to, because I set it all up. So this is just a story, but it's not your typical heartwarming, everybody, family, all lovey-dovey, things happening well. There's a theme of divorce from the start, because the sister's mother and father divorced this last year in the story, and it wasn't the prettiest divorce, and the mom's pretty bitter. She spent 35 years in this marriage, and now she's divorced. And it didn't go anything, and she's taking some of her frustration out on her family, and she's not doing on herself in different ways. So it's really, I dedicated the story to anyone who has lived through divorce, whether it's you or your parents or a sibling or a best friend. We've all, many of us have witnessed what can happen. So while there's a lot of humor in it, there's also a truth in how divorce can not only affect a person, but also a family.
Right.
Even at older ages. I mean, the girls are 30s when their parents are divorced, not just young kids.
Right. Right. And are all the sisters, are they all single?
Well, there's through the series, each one has gotten involved with one of the guys. One's involved with the nephew of the woman who owns the park. That's Claire. And then one's involved with the owner of the local moonshine. It's the Shaft. It's a moonshine runner. Right. But really, he owns the bar. And then another is with the local sheriff, the county sheriff, which is fun because the Morgan sisters end up in jail a lot and they're allergic to the law. So that's always a fun, that the fact that the older sister has gotten involved with the sheriff of the county is just like the family's going, what are you doing? He's the worst person you could ever bring into this family, the law. So it's really fun to have that, the law versus these girls, that they're not like rabid criminals. They just like to lay low as much as they can. Right.
And I see here too that you also have a book 4.5, which is a Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I wrote that a couple years ago. It's called The Wild Turkey Tango. And oh my gosh, that one is so much fun from the start. It's just a one wild ride. And I not to give anything away, this starts with they're going to town. The dog has taken the turkey and dragging it off through the dirt. So they have to go to town Thanksgiving morning to try to find a turkey for dinner, the three sisters and one of the old army vets. And they come across a wild turkey and they catch it. But not to eat it. It's just one of the sisters wants to let it go and get it out of there and keep it safe. And so it's the wild turkey. I mean, in a Jeep with this turkey that wakes up periodically, and then the crazy Thanksgiving dinner that happens after. And then there's a mystery throughout with involving one of the treasures that's been hidden, and that they're trying to figure out the mystery throughout it of where this treasure is, what happened, and that too. So it's really a wild ride and lots of laughs, lots of craziness.
And so is there going to be a book 4.6?
No, but I just leave room because just in case. I was going to do when I should have thought better about making 4.5, but I didn't. So lesson learned, leave myself more room that way. So I did 4.7 just in case. But no, next comes book 6, and the working title is The Rambunctious Tortoise Tussle. So that whole series I have so much fun with the titles. So, it's just part of the fun of it. To show the humor is what I'm trying to do, that these aren't deadly serious, They're deadly in parts, but they're not. There's just a lot of humor mixed within. Yeah,
I love some of the names that you've come up with, like the Dancing Winnebagos and that. That's, Jackrabbit Junction. That's all good stuff.
Yeah.
Your book 6 is out now?
No, I'm working on it.
I'm sorry,
currently.
book 4.7.
4.7. I know, it's a crazy number. The Christmas novella, Jackrabbit Jingle Balls, is out. And the great thing is, when you finish that, it takes you right into what happens with book 5 in cahoots with the Prickly Pear Posse. And that is out.
Right.
So if you read the series in order, it's even better. But if you pick that one up, you can read that. But then you can go and see what happens next. It's already published and out there. So it'll take you forward.
Right. So I'm looking on your website at your future book schedule. So I don't know if it's current or not, but we'll go through this and see if it is.
I know. I was just thinking, oh no, I don't know that I've updated that yet.
So it says next fall 2021, Deadwood Undertaker series number 4.
See, so we're working on the backside of Hades, and that's what my husband's working on. And it's, like I mentioned before, we have elderly parents and some stuff going on. So that's been a little bit backburnered as we help our parents out through some difficulties lately.
Okay. And then you mentioned Jackrabbit Junction number 6 for early 22.
Well, let's hope it's I would like to start writing in December. That is a Christmas month, but I'm hoping to write 25 to 30,000 words and get that thing going so that I can release it maybe by April. Okay.
And then the other two are much more nebulous, but you've got Dig Site Mystery number 3 and sometime in 2022.
I hope in the fall. I always plan to write through the summer, and then summer happens. But usually, like I said, we have a big fan, Charles Anne Charles Fan Party.
Mhm.
There we go.
All right.
And that happens usually in the summer. But this year, we're actually pushing it back to early October. So I hope to just get to spend more time at home this summer.
Okay. And then Deadwood Mystery Series number 13.
Yes, and that's the one after I get the dig site, I will get back to work. And I put that out there because I do get that question a lot. You're going to write 13, right? You're going to get 13 going. And I will. And I promise there is much more to come with Violet Parker for fans of Violet. But I do need to write these other books because of, like I said, I have a whole overall timeline for all the books.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have to keep these other ones going to fit into the overall timeline. And that's
Okay.
So one of the things I have on my website is you can go, there's a list of books, either series, in order, or you can read the books in timeline order. So, which means you'll read different books from different series, but then you'll see how the timeline fits for all the series. And we actually had that listed out for people that want to read the books that way, which is a fun, different way to read all these different series, because then you'll see where someone was in this book, and then the next book, here they are down in Arizona, like they said they were going to be, and then they're back in wherever, Deadwood or wherever. So it's kind of fun that way.
Mm-hmm. And do you have, like you say, you have a timeline. So do you have an ending point for all these series, or?
Probably when I die.
Okay. So.
Yes. What I judge by is the readers, and if they're getting tired, if I'm getting tired. And so far, nobody's tired. They're excited for the next. And I'm not tired of writing them either. I try to mix things up. I do different pacing things, cadence, structural things, different ways I'll write scenes. I study different movies and other books to try to see behind the scenes how things are going, and try to change up each story so that it feels a little different. And I kind of equate it overall to a big roller coaster ride,
right.
With different highs and lows. Some parts are smoother and some parts are scary and all that good stuff.
Right. Just a little more on the mundane stuff. You sound like you have a fairly set schedule, a good work ethic. What's a typical writing day for you, and what's your daily word count that you try to hit?
Well, when I'm not promoting a new release like I am right now, which means I don't do much writing because I'm so busy doing all the different promotional things and prep. I would say I wake up and my kids, I get up with the kids for school. My husband and I take them and pick them up. And so I'll be there before they head off to school. And then I get some time alone, and sometimes I exercise if I'm actually motivated to do that. Other times I address email and stuff like that. But I do try to write 2,000 words a day when I'm in the thick of a story. That's always my goal, 2,000 words. And they can be really crappy words and just take me 2 hours just to throw them on the page, or they can be all editing time spent where I'm deleting and adding and delete, and it takes me all day. But I do try to get those 2,000 words a day in. And when I finish a story, with the way I write, it's not like I finish and then I go through and spend tons of times editing and moving things around. I tend to write, and when I finish a chapter, it's pretty solid. I'm not going to really do much. I might add a line here and there for something further down the line, but I don't do hardly any changing. So as I finish each chapter, it's pretty set. And I send those off to my first draft readers, and they get like weekly installments, sometimes one chapter, sometimes two. And if they get none, they get really kind of, they write me mean notes and say, "What are you doing? I saw you on Facebook. Get back to writing.
Right.
I need the next chapter." So that's kind of a typical, and I don't have a certain time of day that I write because, again, I do have kids, and sometimes I'm on field trips. Sometimes I'm writing late into the night. Because of that,
Right.
I just write when I can and try to keep going.
Very good. Well, that's all the questions I had. Is there anything that hasn't come up so far that you'd like to mention?
I don't think so. Just that when you read my books, they're not meant to change your life. I'm not going to tell you to clean your house up and get rid of all your books or anything like that.
Right.
What they're meant to do is entertain you. And, there's lots of true bits of history and stuff. Like in the adventure novels, I add true things from history. One, like Thanksgiving one, has stuff about Pancho Villa. So I do research and incorporate a lot of nonfiction into these books. But they're meant to give you an escape from everyday life and give you somewhere to go and have fun and enjoy someone else's troubles and watching someone else duck and run and deal with the things in life we deal with. So I just hope that I give you a smile or two throughout the stories and take your mind off your problems.
And boy, do people need that nowadays.
Right. Me too.
That's great. So it was great to have you back on, Anne. I always like having returning guests. And for everybody out there, I'll put up a link to her website and you can check out her latest book, which is Jackrabbit Junction, and I'm going to say this right this time, is Jingle Balls.
Jackrabbit Jingle Balls, yep. It's crazy like it sounds.
Yeah. All right, Anne. You enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for coming on.
And thank you for having me on again, Lou. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, great. And good luck with your future projects.
Thank you.
And any needles that you have to get in the future. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.